Hi Grace Point, it's Natasha. I'm in upstate New York right now. I want to give a big shout out to my online community and welcome you all here today. We're so glad you could make it. We want you to know that no matter who you are, who you love, or how you exist in this world, you are celebrated, loved, and welcomed. Enjoy the service.
Good morning, Grace Point. I'm Emily. Ricky's in New York celebrating his 40th birthday. Maybe he's watching online. Let's say happy birthday, Ricky. Let's stand. I'm sure y'all know this song. If you feel comfortable, maybe like link arms with each other and I don't know. Let's sing it. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me, yeah. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if you have this. You need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me, call on me, neighbor, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me, yeah. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, neighbor, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road and I'll share your load. If you just call me, yeah, call me. If you need a hand, oh, you call me, just call me, You guys sound good.
All right, would you take a minute and greet somebody? This is the meeting greet time as you find your seats.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. My name's Amanda. My pronouns are she, her, and I've got some announcements for you about some really cool stuff that we've got going on. Faith, thank you for texting me that I look hot. I appreciate that. Turn my phone on airplane mode. Okay. If you are looking for ways to get connected to Grace Point, we've got lots of great opportunities for you. There's a QR code that's everywhere, and all of the things that you need for all the cool things that we're doing is on, all those things are on the QR code. We have Reimagine that meets Wednesdays via Zoom. More information about that is connected to the QR code. GP College is going to start meeting on Belmont's campus before church next Sunday. Carpool to church together after getting together as a squad, and you can email Tiffany@gracepoint.net for more info about that. GP Kids will be hosting a training for all the volunteers next Sunday, February 12th. If you're interested in serving with GP Kids, you need to reach out to Tiffany for more information about this sort of training that's happening with all the volunteers. We're going to be launching a new group for members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The form for all of that kind of stuff is again on that QR code. And then we have a new book study coming up that's hosted by me. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be so fun. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about the book inspired by Rachel Held Evans. The book study is called Red Flags, Warning Signs, and the Lies We Were Told About the Bible. You can either join in person or online. Either way, if you fill out the Google form that's connected to that QR code, it's going to help with just knowing how many chairs I need to pull out of my parents' basement, how many snacks I need to buy at Trader Joe's, all that good stuff. And I'm going to be sending out the address in that email. So if you sign up for that, you're going to get all of the good information. You don't have to read the book to come to the book study. You're not going to be lost if you don't have time to read whatever is on the schedule. You can still come to the meeting. You're not going to be left out or not know what's going on because you didn't read the book. That's okay. Yeah. February 9th, 23rd, March 9th, and 23rd, 6 to 8. 6 to 6:30 is snacks, hang out with your friends, and then 6:30 to 8 is question the existence of God. So, really excited about that. Normal, your typical hanging out with your friends conversation. At least it is if you have friends that go to Grace Point. Okay, and the last thing is financial support. The work that we do to create a safe, affirming, and transformative community is made possible by your generous financial support. To those who already support us, thanks. If you would like to become a part of sustaining the work of our community, here's how you can do that. You can text GracePoint to 77977. You can go to gracepoint.net/give. You can scan the QR code, or you can Venmo us at GracePoint with an E at the end of point, TN. That's all I've got. Everybody give it up for Josh Scott.
I just have always wanted to have Amanda be energy. I just don't have that. A couple things real quick before we continue. First of all, our music and arts director, Ricky Brady, is not here because he's out celebrating his 40th birthday. He's officially old. Can we, maybe he'll watch this back, can we give him a cheer for his birthday? Everybody? Number 2, next Sunday we're starting a new series that'll take us through the Easter season. How many of you have heard of Jesus before? Okay, a couple of you. The rest of you are going to be totally blown away by this series. We're titling it based on a book that has been really meaningful in so many of our lives. It's called Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time by Marcus Borg. So the title of the series is Meeting Jesus Again. And what I'm going to offer over this series is, if I were to write that book in a sermon form, what would I say about Jesus? And so over the next several weeks, I'm just going to share who I think Jesus is for me, who he was historically, and then toward the end, we'll ask questions about what do we do with Jesus today. We'll talk about things like the death of Jesus. We'll talk about Easter. We'll cover all of that stuff that for those of us who have been on a journey makes us feel a little like the average Sunday is great, but Christmas and Easter are super weird. Anybody else in that camp? So this series is for you. And then finally, we are in the month of February, which is very important because it is Black History Month. And it feels more and more important each and every year simply because we are in a moment in the United States of America where lots and lots of leaders and lots of states are trying to whitewash our history. They're trying to silence actual history and the lived experience of Black Americans. And so we are committed at Grace Point to naming that and to naming that it's important for us to hear these stories and to hear our history. Black history is American history. And if it makes us uncomfortable, then we need to face that. We need to look into it very deeply and ask questions about how we want to do things differently. Are you with me? Yeah. So check out this spoken word video, and we'll continue.
I have been folding my tongue beneath itself, bleaching my language, clenching my jaw with shackled teeth, because the moment I open my mouth, uprising spring from my saliva, my dialogue is cruddy. Trample with the muddy boots of trade and migration, battling nations in my diaphragm, so the rhythm in my diction sounds like a war cry. And despite the white stuffed down my windpipe, I talk black with nappy phonics, syllables that kink and twist, naughty expression that beads on my palate, soul glow in this spit shine flow, Jerry curl jogging, bongo drums in my diction. This slang is semantic resistance, off with the head of the king's English. Can't you smell the riot on my breath? Char in my esophagus, my laugh is arsenic. And ain't enough opiates in this elementary education to hook me on phonics or gentrify the djembe out of my pronunciation. Love the taste of this cornbread accent. Sugar cane slang my tongue is. Motherland, mama of civilization, birth of every nation. Scat, boom, back, hi-hat, jazz, sax. There is music in my melanin in. I be talking hella black. With a neck roll to articulate my tone. Conversations get you high as my cheekbones, and lingo about lush as these hips done grown. Thick thighs and deep fried vernacular. Hand motions and sound effects. Hieroglyphics hidden in my messages. My breath is the building of the pyramids on repeat. I'm like a Negro spiritual sampled over a trap beat. There is a black anthem inside my belly, so I will always lift every voice and speak.
You guys stand? You know, this song was, I think, written with a different context. We've changed the words just a little bit. And so I just want to encourage you to, as you're listening or singing, whatever you feel comfortable with, these walls that we're talking about are not always walls that we create, which I know in the evangelical church I heard a lot. You know, it was like I was always putting up these walls. It was my problem, my sin, my depravity, my, you know. But that's one thing I love about this church, is that we've seen things in a different way. We've seen things in a new way that help us heal and really change. And so I want to tell you that this song, when I sing it and when I hear it, the power of these words that tear down the walls that are built, every wall that's been built, is so healing and helpful, not for just me, but for other people. Systemic walls, parental walls, right? Like there's these walls that we face and that we deal with, and it's not always from us. It's not always internal. And so, I don't know, sometimes like we have a different relationship with worship at church, depending on what you're going through, where you are in your journey. And I just would encourage you that this song doesn't have to be what you think it is. It can be what you need it to be right now, for it to be authentic to you. Tear down the walls that are built, every wall that's been built, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the peace in my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Lord, I am trusting that you will be Savior, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Lord, I am trusting that you will be faithful to me, and all that you have is good. You're a generous giver, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer, closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Tear down the walls that are every wall that's been, every wall that's been. 'Cause you are the piece of my, every piece of my, every piece of my heart. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer, closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Come, tear down the walls that are every wall that's been, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the piece of my, every piece of my, every piece of my heart. Come and tear down the walls that are every wall that's been, every wall that's been built. You are the piece of my, every piece of my, every piece of my heart. Tear down the walls that are every wall that's been, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the piece of my, every piece of my, every piece of my heart. Yeah.
Well, I have to admit, the last few weeks have felt a little bit like Christmas for me because I've had friends here every week that you've been able to hear from, and I'm so excited about today. How many of you are aware and know and follow the work of Colby Martin? Anybody? Yeah. Well, if you don't, you're about to. So let me read a proper bio, and we'll welcome Colby. Colby Martin has been a pastor for 20 years. The first decade within evangelical Christianity and the last decade as a post-evangelical progressive Christian. He's the author of 2 books, UnClobber, Rethinking Our Misuse of the Bible and Homosexuality, and The Shift, a survival guide for becoming a progressive Christian, for which he's currently on a nationwide tour, sharing with communities about a vision for a kind of Christian practice, but with a progressive flavor. Real quick, there's a table right back there where he has his books. I think UnClobber is sold out and is actually out at the publisher, so they're working on more. But if you want to buy a copy of The Shift, or if you want UnClobber, you can Venmo him and give him your address, and he'll send you a copy signed whenever they come in. He planted a progressive Christian church in San Diego in 2014 called Sojourn Grace Collective. He enjoys golfing, running, and yoga. And perhaps the most important thing you need to know about Colby is he taught me everything I know about styling hair. Grace Point, will you give your best good morning to Colby Martin?
Hello, everybody. What up, GP? So I come from San Diego, and one of my favorite things to do there is take my kids to SeaWorld. And 2 of our 4 children really love what is called the splash zone. Have you been to SeaWorld? Do you know what this is? This is the area in which you might get liquidated by the sea creatures, the whales and the dolphins. And I notice there's a lot of room open in the splash zone. So if anybody wants to come and experience some saliva flowing today, I welcome you to move. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking of splash zone, Josh, thank you so much for, I don't know where you went. Doesn't matter, irrelevant. Thank you for having me here. I met Josh a long time ago, and one of my favorite Josh and Colby stories is we were at a conference in Chicago. By the way, band, don't mind me, I just might be moving things around so that I can pace. A number of years ago in Chicago, we were at this conference, and we were staying at an Airbnb house together with a number of people, and the next day, we didn't know the area very well, and the next day, we wanted to go get coffee before the conference started. So we looked at the neighborhood of where the church was at, and we just kind of picked at least 4-star and above coffee, because we have standards. And we take this Uber ride to the coffee shop, and while we're getting our coffee, it just starts to pour, just torrentially pour. The heavens have opened up, and the second great deluge has begun here upon earth. And we thought to ourselves, we are not walking to because we just thought we'd walk to the venue. We're like, this is wow, we're not going to do that. So we're like, all right, let's get an Uber to take us to the venue. So we call up another Uber. We run outside when the Uber gets there. We get into the back seat, and we climb back there. Neither one of us are small individuals, and we kind of huddle into the back seat here. I'm giving you a real-time reinterpretation of our Uber trip. We climb in, close the door. The Uber driver puts it in, starts the car. Okay, we're here. We traveled, I think, a block. It was the world's shortest Uber ride, and we had no idea. We were so embarrassed. The gal's like, is this really where I'm taking you? We're like, yeah, I guess so. So we get out of our car, and, well, we didn't get as wet as if we would have walked. But that is just one of the many ways that I love my buddy Josh, because we will just go on adventures and take block-long Uber rides. Okay. That's it. I'm ready to get into the real reason why I came here today. Does that sound all right? Okay. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to open with a word of prayer, and you are welcome to engage in this moment however you like. I tend to close my eyes, not because it's magical or mystical, but because it helps me to locate, to be here now. So if you want, I invite you to close your eyes with me. I invite you to take a deep breath in and let it out. And maybe if you want, place a hand wherever you feel kind of your life source, wherever you feel the place that reminds you that you're here. For me, this is on my abdomen because I feel my breath there. I invite you to take another deep breath in with me. Let it out. And what I love about drawing myself back to my breath is it reminds me that I did nothing. I did nothing. The second right before that breath came, I did nothing to really earn that breath. I didn't even have to think about it. It's just there. It's this gift, this grace. And so, God, with that in mind, I'm here amongst friends old and hopefully new, with a posture of gratitude in my heart, because we have another day, we have breath, we have life, and that is gift. And so, God, as I share what is on my heart to say this morning, I guess my prayer is this: if there's anything that I'm about to say that is good or true or would be helpful for people on their journey of faith, then God, may it cling to our hearts, may it stick in our minds, may it live with us. And then conversely, if anything I have to say, I don't know, isn't good, isn't all that true, might not be helpful for someone, then, geez, let us just forget it the minute I say it. And so may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be a gift for those who need it this morning. One more deep breath in and out. All right, amen. Good, love it. Okay, so the following three things make sense to me. Thing number one, humans are, you might say, by nature, mistrustful of those who look different, talk different, think different, act different. By nature, we are mistrustful of this. And you can kind of discover this as you look into evolutionary biology. You can sort of discover that it was actually the fear of the other, the protection of just the tribe, that in part allowed Homo sapiens to branch off from other sapiens as a way to sort of as a way to evolve and transcend. It was this mistrust, this protection of our own, this fear of the other. In fact, there is even research that shows that babies, you could put babies in the context of someone whose pigmentation of skin is vastly different from their own, and they respond very differently. So even like coded into our DNA is this anxiety, this fear, this mistrust of the other. There's a sense in which that makes sense to me from that perspective. Thing number two, it also makes sense to me then that because we are meaning-making machines as humans, our ancestors would have over time needed to figure out a way to make sense of this inherent mistrust. Okay, here's what just happened. Right now in this moment, my iPad went offline and my notes didn't come with me. Josh, do you have Wi-Fi here? Oh, this is fun. And I left my phone over on my table. Here, I got you. Everybody say, thank you, Adam. All right. While he's doing that. So the second thing that makes sense to me is that as meaning-making machines, we as humans, I think we needed to make sense of the fact that we had this instinct in us, this fear of the other, this mistrust. And so we began to come up with stories and reasons why. And what happened is we began to then solidify groups and our tribes into good and bad. And what you notice is that nobody's stories ever really involves their own people as the bad, right? Like we're always the good, and it's the other that's bad. They're the scary, they're the different, they're the wrong. And so we began to develop these stories to make sense of these instincts, and now our people are right and they are wrong. And then the third thing that makes sense to me is that not only do we need to make, you're delightful. Thank you, Adam. And the third thing that makes sense to me is that not only do we need to make sense of this, but we needed to figure out a way to memorialize and preserve the ways in which we have told ourselves that we are good, we are safe, we are right, they are bad, they are scary, they are wrong. We needed a way to preserve that. Why? Because the number one most important thing for any living creature is to survive and procreate. And so we needed to teach our children and our children's children these stories to protect us from the scary tribes. I'm reminded of, anybody watch the HBO show from the book Station 11? Okay, one person did. Thank you. That's all I needed. There's this little line in that book that says, "To the monsters, we're the monsters." And I just love that reminder of to anybody's other, that other is an other. And our people are the good and they are the bad. So 3 things make sense to me. We are sort of coded into our DNA, this mistrust, this fear of the other. 2, we end up turning that into a story about how we are the good ones, we are the right ones, and they are the bad ones, the wrong ones. And then 3, we end up telling ways or figuring out ways to institutionalize and memorialize and preserve this, so we pass this on to our children to keep them safe and preserve our genetic lineage. Now, what has happened then somehow along the history of human evolution as civilization and consciousness development continued on is that somehow along the way, somewhere, some people began to question this. Really? Is that tribe just around the river bend all that scary? What if they're not going to eat us in our sleep? And when I read things like the Old Testament and I read some of these stories of people like the ancient Israelites, I get the sense that some amongst them were some of the folks who began to question these narratives and wonder if maybe the tribes around us are not as scary as we thought. Maybe we can transcend these instincts of mistrust of the other. Maybe. I think one word for this you might just call like a miracle. It's kind of a miracle that there have been humans throughout history that have somehow had this instinct, this intuition that maybe those who are different from me are not to be feared. Amen. Hey, thank you. This is fun. And here's how I might put a finer point on what I've said thus far. To put a finer point on it, I would say this. The kind of tribalism that I've described thus far, where we fear the other and we get the sense that we are the good ones, this kind of tribalism, I think, can be summed up in one word. And that word for me is judge. To judge. I suggest to you that tribalism inherently judges. For to judge is to create distance and distinction and separation from others. And I think this invitation to transcend this kind of tribalism really is a way to find a reconnection with others. In a sense, it is this conscious decision to not judge. So you have this series you've been going through here at Grace Point, Stories of Seeing Differently, Epiphany. And I wanted to share with you, I think, one of the most profound shifts I've had in my life as it relates to seeing things differently. Really something that's changed everything about how I move through the world. And to do that, I want to go all the way back to the beginning with you. Not the beginning of my life, even farther back. Let's go to the beginning of the Hebrew Scriptures. Y'all remember the ancient Jewish conceptions of how the world came to be, these stories in Genesis 1, 2, and 3 about the creation of everything. And do you remember how in Genesis 2, when God made the first human and placed the human in this theoretically perfect garden and said, everything is yours, enjoy it all. Except there's one fruit from this one tree. That one's off limits. But everything else, I mean, come on, just have at it. It's party time. But just this one tree from this one fruit, está no bien. And do you remember what this tree is? Do you remember what this tree is? It's got a unique name, right? It's the tree of good and evil. No. Some of you, it's the knowledge of good and evil. Thank you. It's actually the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And for most of my life, I kind of just skipped over that knowledge part. And I just, in my mind, I thought, it's the tree of good and evil. So if you eat of the tree, then I guess you become evil. you start doing bad things. The debauchery begins on the other side of this delicious fruit. But it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a number of years ago, I found that endlessly fascinating. And I just stuck with that thought over and over again. Why? Why? Why is this the thing that the divine says, not that? Everything else, yes. This, I would think that if I were God, and thank God I'm not, I would think that if I were God, I would want my newly minted creation, like the pinnacle of created beings, I would want them to know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil. I would think I would want them to know that. In fact, we have a word today that we use for people that don't know the difference between right and wrong. We call them sociopaths. So is that really what God wanted? Just like a creation of sociopaths? I mean, kind of mission accomplished. But, so this is really, why? Why is this the thing that God, the knowledge of good and evil, don't eat of that fruit? And I wonder, could it be that in the Jewish conception of how the world came to be, as they were trying to articulate how it is that their view of God, Yahweh, was perhaps, by contrast, different to the other gods of the Babylonian empires around them, perhaps they had this intuition, this instinct, this enlightened idea that maybe when it all comes down to it, the one thing that God feels that perhaps human beings are ill-equipped to do, ill-equipped to handle, is this ability to judge. It's as though God says, y'all, you can have it all, but that whole capacity to be able to discern who's right, who's wrong, what's evil, what's good, that actually is something I'm gonna keep for myself. It's as though God's like, no offense, humans, but if you start to have the ability to judge, I think you might screw things up. So I get the sense the ancient Israelites were trying to perhaps imagine a God whose hope for humanity is that there would be less of this kind of tribalism, less of this kind of inherent judgment and separation and distinction between who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad. All right, back to the creation story real quick. There's another part in this Jewish creation story. This shows up in Genesis 3. You recall there was a serpent in the garden. Fun fact, never called Satan. You can look that up on your own. It's real. There's just a serpent in the garden in this story. And the serpent somehow knows that the idea of being able to judge, the idea of being able to discern between good and evil, right and wrong, would be an enticing thing for humans. And so the serpent comes to Eve and says, look, I get it. God said you're going to die if you eat of this fruit, but don't be dramatic, woman. You're not going to die. Everything's going to be fine. In fact, your eyes are going to be opened. That's the real truth here. And you'll start to be like God insofar as you can know between right and wrong, good and evil. I mean, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? In Genesis 3:6, the woman saw that the tree was indeed beautiful and the food did look delicious. And the tree, the text says, would provide wisdom. It would provide this ability to know the difference between good and evil. And so she took some of its fruit and she ate it, and she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he also ate it. And then in verse 7, they both saw clearly and knew they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made garments for themselves. 3 quick observations. First, they saw clearly. Suddenly they had new insights. They could judge. This is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. You are wrong, I am right. No offense to you, I just locked eyes with you. You're wonderful, I'm sure. She's like, why did he just do that? They saw clearly. Now they can discern. Now they can judge. Number 2, they saw that they were naked. They now saw each other in a new light, a new, you might say, identity. Before, it was just man and woman. It was good. It was all good. And now it was naked man and naked woman. And so they had knowledge of new identities that they didn't have before, new markers of distinction. It's like they had labels for each other. Suddenly there was a sense of separation. Maybe from themselves. Ooh, I got to cover up. From each other. Ooh, you better cover up. Quick pause here, and Josh, this might get me uninvited from future Grace Point Sundays. My apologies ahead of time. Quick point, and I might lose you here, but it's fine. What's going to happen is going to happen. I love you all, and I love this world that we inhabit. And by this world, primarily, I mean like this progressive Christian thing that we're trying to figure out. But can I just say this? And remember when I prayed at the beginning, if anything's not good, not true, not helpful, just let us forget it. This might be true for some of you. Okay, I do have some concerns every once in a while within my progressive world. I do every once in a while wonder if we get so overly concerned with and so preoccupied with our various identity markers that by the time we list them all off and eventually get to human, we've like forgotten the human part. And we've created all these layers of separation by all these various markers, and then human comes at the end. And there are times when I think maybe over on the progressive side, we get a little carried away, and the intent is good and the heart is good, which is why I don't want you to leave me right now. Like, I get it. But sometimes I just want to bring it all back to we're just all humans. Okay. Back to the subject at hand. So for me, I read this story, and it's not that they became evil right away, right? This is oftentimes sort of the way in which we have internalized this story over the years. We might have heard it or whatever context, and we think they eat from the forbidden fruit, and then they become wicked, evil people. And this is really not the point, as I understand it, of what the story is saying to us. It doesn't seem like this is what's going on to me. It seems that rather they became people who started to see one another as different, as distinct, with new identities. And this is why my third observation here is that they began to sew these fig leaves and make garments for themselves, because now with this new knowledge that they have, this insight into right, wrong, good, bad, that's able to make distinctions, they now felt a sense of shame. And shame, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, Grace Point. You know this as well as I do. Shame is this thing that sits at the very heart of what it feels like to be disconnected. Disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from our family, our communities, disconnected from the divine. Shame. Shame is a thing that convinces us of that. It's not true, BT dubs. You can't actually be disconnected from the divine. But shame sure as hell tells us it's true. So for me, when I kind of put this calculus together, it seems almost as simple as saying that judging leads to shame. Deciding who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's out. That leads to shame, whether we internalize the shame because we now feel like we're on the outs, or whether we hoist it upon others because you're wrong and now they feel this sense of shame. Judging leads to shame. And I think that one of the most profound insights into the human condition that stories like Genesis 1, 2, and 3 illuminate, one of the most profound insights into the human condition is that at our core, I think humanity is not designed to speak words of judgment against one another. I think that job, if it even exists, is God's and God's alone. So where does that leave us? Well, this is the epiphany that I referred to earlier that changed how I see everything. And it's one of those things where it's so bloody obvious that once I saw, I couldn't figure out how I hadn't seen before. And even when I say it to you, you're going to be like, oh, that's what all this was leading up to? But I promise you, there comes a day when the most profound truths are so simple, but they have a way of falling into our hearts in such a way it just knocks us over with, oh, I get it now. And so this is the epiphany that has, I would say quite literally, or at least millennial literally, changed the course of my life the last 10 years. And it's this. The author of the book of 1 John once wrote that God is love. And I believe that real love, true love, the purest form of capital L love, does not judge, like, at all. Which means that I think that God may not have a judging bone in their metaphorical anthropological body. I don't think God has a bone in God's anthropomorphic body. I may be wrong. I've been wrong on lots of things. Lots of things I've been wrong on. To which you're like, well, then why are you here? I don't know. Maybe because I'm honest about how wrong I am. So I may be wrong about this. But this is what I have believed for years now, that there is no God judging you. Not now. Not ever. Not later tonight for Sunday Fun Day. Not when you think back to 3 weeks ago and that thing you said to that one person. Not the thing you're probably going to do a month from now. That's going to disappoint someone. No judgment, at least not from God. No judgment. And I think that's good news. I think that's good news. But I get how for many it is not good news. Because oftentimes what can happen is if we let go of the idea that God doesn't judge, then we also have to confront the fact that perhaps we ought not judge. And that can get real scary real fast. Because many of us need the ability to create distinction between others. We need to other others. We need to know who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's out. And even, I think, many of us in this room, because I imagine your stories are similar to mine, many of us in this room, we came out of worlds and religions and communities in which that was kind of the primary focus, and we had these demarcation identities of behavior and belief, and we're like, okay, we know what the tribe looks like and what it requires to get inside the tent and the gatekeepers and that whole tomfoolery, and we have left that, or in some cases been kicked out of it, and we found this more expansive thing. What did we start doing once we got outside of the gate? We made new gates. And we're like, I'm so glad I'm not like them anymore. So glad I'm not like how I used to be. And we just kind of created new ways of separation and judging, all the while trying to convince ourselves that we're not playing the us and them game anymore. And so what I'm saying is it can be scary and super vulnerable to let go of the idea that maybe God doesn't judge at all, because then we have to have this like trickle-down doctrinal, theological, philosophical, humanitarian impact to where now, what if we shouldn't be judging either? But like I said at the very beginning, this is hard. It's hard to do. Because our ancestors worked really, 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 really hard to get us to where we are today. And that involved a level of creating safety and boundaries. And so it's like coded into our DNA to mistrust others. So those instincts run deep. It's hard to just kind of be like, I think we should not judge. I get it. It's easier said than done. But I also think that some things can only be done once they've been said. So I guess I'm here saying to you, I don't think God has a judging bone in their body. I think it means that you and I, to the extent that they exist in us, would do well to begin to eradicate that from us as well. So yeah, we got this judging gene, if you will. But you know what's also coded into our DNA? What's also coded into our DNA, another thing that runs through our very soul is that we also are somehow, we have this imago Dei in us, this image of God. Somehow there is this mystical, magical, divine stardust that also courses through our veins, that also runs through us. And I think that this imago Dei that is within us, this image of God, that we can actually be empowered just by the very fact of having this God in us. We can be empowered to actually just stop judging. And it's actually as simple as that. I know it's not easy, but it actually is as simple as that. We can just stop. We can begin to notice when we're doing it. We can begin to notice when we begin to think of other people as less than. We can begin to notice when we think of other people with different labels and we start to call them things. We can think of it when we start to do it to ourselves and we start to internalize these ideas. We can actually just take a step back and say, no, actually, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to take Tuesday off. I'll give myself Thursday because you don't know Denise at the office, but I'm going to take Tuesday off. We can actually just stop. We can choose another way. We can choose another path. We can choose love. Now, I hear what some of you are thinking. And I'm not really going to respond to it because I think that's part 2 of this message and I just don't have time today. So maybe, Josh, if I do get invited back, I can do. Because part 2 of this message is, okay, but Colby, what do we do about the fact that there really is like injustice and harm that happens in the world and people really do things that hurt people? I think the key there is that we can, with discernment and caution and care, and once we've removed the speck out of our eye, then we can begin to judge, have an opinion about, be somewhat aware of the actions of other people, but never the identity. That's, for me, the distinction. We can have a judgment very, very. I would slow your roll on it, by the way, because that's the whole plank splinter thing. Is like it takes a lot of work before you can actually have a thing to say about someone's actions. But judging identities, not for us. I'm going to invite the band up, and here's how I'm going to close. I said a minute ago that I think that God and God alone is capable of judging. I think that's it. I think this is the thing that the divine, that God, that whatever, that the source that is in all and through all. There's like one thing that this being, this ground of being, there's this one thing that is like, I love you guys, I do. Like, trust me, I love you. But I think if you have this capacity to separate, to divide, to create distinction, to know the difference between right and wrong, I think it's going to be a disaster. I think I need to hold on to that for myself. And I actually think we can take that one step further, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. If God and God alone, if I'm correct about this, and God alone is the only one both capable of rightly judging identity and the only one that ought, I actually think that judgment has already been rendered. And for me, this is illuminated in the story of Jesus being baptized by his cousin John. And if you remember that story, as Jesus comes up out of the water, people reported it was as though there was this voice from the heavens that said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And I think that, Grace Point, is the judgment, the assessment, the label of your identity and everyone who's ever lived. That you are a beloved Son of God, and in you God is well pleased. That you are a beloved daughter of God, and in you God is well pleased. That you are a beloved child of God, and in you God is well pleased. That's it. It's it. It's true about you. It's true about me. And this is the epiphany that has changed my life. To move into anything else, to try to have any other assessment of who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's out, to do any of that, I think, is to fight against the flow of the universe. It is to put into the fabric of the divine something that does not belong. To try to separate what is inherently connected will never work. So I leave you with those words. You, and you, and you, and you, and you. Where's the camera? And you are a beloved child of God, full stop, just as you are. And in you, God is well pleased.
I don't know how you would sit through this song. I mean, you could if you want to, I guess.
Through
Instagram is Mary Oliver's Drunk Cousin. It's a great Instagram follow. You should follow her. Her poem is called Cracks of Light. She says, I'm so grateful that bad days are often followed by good ones, that sometimes when it's raining, the sun makes a little cameo, that time really does heal, and in the meantime, sleep helps. Our dogs can tell when we need extra comfort, and that when the worst case scenario takes us by surprise, so does our own strength. Grace Point, we love you, and we're proud of you. Have a great week.